Well, Debbie sent, this is nothing exciting, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard things about me. I've been here over 40 years, so been here a long time. Debbie sent me an email in October, and it said, several church members who know you well have expressed how they've seen God work in your life healing. Okay, you know who you are, and you're in trouble if you were one of those people that told her to ask me, because I don't like to get up in front of people. But my faith journey is not exciting or mountaintop or anything like that, but it has been tested. And I know I've been in church my whole life, my parents, my grandparents, everybody. My earliest memories were in Ellaville Methodist Church, which is in South Georgia, in the middle of nowhere. And when I was about 5 or 6, my dad sang in the choir there. He grew up there. My grandmother went there. It's a small, very small. We had one caution light until we had a celebration when we got a real stoplight. One, still only one there. And everyone was either Methodist or Baptist. There wasn't any other choices. The Methodist church was on one end of town, and about 3 blocks up was the Baptist church, and you had to be one of those. There wasn't any choice until my friend Shannon moved to Ellaville, and she was Catholic. Sheila, we did not know what to do with her. She told us she was Catholic, but we went, huh? We didn't know what that was. We asked her where she was going to go to church. She just looked at us like we were crazy. And she only had 2 choices, remember, Methodist or Baptist. But my dad sang in the choir, and I would sit with my mom and my meemaw. And you would just have to know my meemaw. Meemaw did not stand for any wiggling in church. So first you would get the side evil eye, and then if you still wiggled, out came the purse, and she'd give us juicy fruit gum. And I don't know what was in that juicy fruit gum, but it at least got us to the end of the last song so that we didn't get in trouble. And my Sunday school teacher was Miss Kelly. I can see her now. She had a bright red lipstick, and she was amazing. Loved her. Her favorite part, my favorite part, was when she'd bring out the box of instruments. She had tambourines and those blocks that make noise and all kinds of things, and that was the best part of Sunday school, and we'd sing Jesus Love Me and Climbing Up Sunshine Mountain. Some of y'all might know that one, it's old. Fast forward, our family moved a lot because of my dad had transfers and jobs. But everywhere we moved, we lived in Alabama some, we lived in Arkansas, and we always found a Methodist church to attend and was well welcomed. Everywhere we went, we made a lot of friends and had some great relationships, some of which we stay in touch. Thank goodness for Facebook so that we can stay in touch. And we moved to Lawrenceville, Georgia, my junior year of high school. So I met Ricky my junior year, and 6 months later, we got married. So I'm considering that, because I was 17 and he was 18, so I'm calling those my rebellious years, because I was a total rule-following nerd in high school, and so marrying young drama was my teenage rebellion. So we stopped going to church, and my parents didn't, but I did. And Ricky and I just started trying to be a young married couple, working and trying to grow up. And 5 years later, Michael was born, and so, I had to get him in church. So I needed to find a church, and that was not easy because I attended several and just didn't feel like we belonged anywhere. They just weren't as welcoming, and so that didn't go really well. And then we moved to Auburn, when I was pregnant with Michelle in 1983. One afternoon, and Ricky and I had our own business called Smith's Foreign Car in Lawrenceville, and I was helping him run that business. And one afternoon, I was tired, I was nauseous, I had a sink full of dishes, a pile of laundry in front of the washing machine, Legos, Hot Wheels cars, all over the place. Cindy and Louise Hutchins came to my house to invite me to Midway. So imagine what they must have thought at that house when they came. I never asked her because I didn't want to know, but
I didn't notice my house looked
so good. That's good to know. But they invited me to Midway, but it was still like 18 months when Michelle was about 18 months that I finally said, we're going to Midway. And let me tell you, Michelle is listening. Michelle came into this church like a tornado. She was screaming, she was wiggling, she was all over the place, she was crawling under the pews, popping people's pantyhose. I couldn't keep her still for anything. The harder I tried, the more louder she got. I'm survived. I can't believe these windows survived those screaming. I cannot. I'd pick her up and she'd do the dead man flop as I was walking out this door. And the nursery was right behind that door. So everybody still heard her screaming. So it was a nightmare. And so Cindy told me one time the topic of the Hutchins lunch every Sunday after church was Miss Louise saying, I hope Pam and Michelle come back next Sunday. Even though it was so embarrassing, and I told Ricky every Sunday, I am never going back. I'm never going back. She can't behave. I can't make her behave. And every Sunday I'd get up and get the kids ready, and we'd go to Midway. I'd say, I'm going. It didn't matter. But she finally settled down, and Michael and Michelle got involved in all the kids' activities and youth and made lasting friendships, and everybody just accepted me totally. But I never knew how much this family loved me until the day everything fell apart and my faith was put to the test. So in October of '95, it was on a Saturday morning, and it was my first year teaching, so nothing got done during the week. So on Saturday mornings, I was at it doing chores. I needed to run to the bank, and Michael was 16, and he said, I'll go to the bank, because he wanted to drive and run the errands. So I gave him the keys to my car and sent him on his way. He'd been gone a little while, and then this huge thunderstorm came, and it was torrential rain. And I kept working, and I was worried, and time ticked on, and, Michael didn't get home, and I knew he was just going right up here to Auburn. And, there was no cell phones back then, so I couldn't call him. More time passed, still no Michael. Then the phone rang, and it was my neighbor, Gary, and he said, I'm so glad you answered the phone because I just saw a van just like yours in an accident. And I said, Gary, Michael's in my van. So he came down there to get me because Ricky was at work and took me up to where everything was going on. And an officer met me in the road and said, Michael's gone to Winder. I said, okay. So we went to Winder. And when I got there, they said he had already been moved to Athens. And Joe was there, Joe Hutchins, that morning. And so he drove Michelle and I to Athens, and we prayed all the way. And Gary went back to get Ricky and bring him. So it was not good. And so they put him instantly into surgery. And so we called my parents, and my mom scared them to death, of course, because, like I said, no cell phone, so I didn't have their number memorized. And so they called the police in Andersonville, and got the police to find them, which that didn't help any. I should have really thought that. And so my mom and I were sitting there in the waiting room waiting. And I sat there for a long time in quiet, and I told my mom, I said, I don't know if my faith is strong enough to deserve a miracle. She was devastated that I said that. But at that moment, all the life experiences, all the preaching, all the Bible lessons from Miss Kelly, and all of my 30 plus years of going to church, I had just twisted. It was all twisted into wondering if I earned a miracle. But Michael was an organ donor, not a conversation that Ricky and I had ever had. But Michael was so caring and full of life that when we were approached with that decision, we didn't even have to discuss it because that's what Michael would have done. And he would have chosen that for sure. That we had no doubt. So he got to save 5 lives through his donation. And everything after that just moved in slow motion for the next few days. There is so much I don't remember. That's just like a block of time that things were going on, and I just was numb. And I know that this church kicked into turbo zone because things just started happening, and things were being taken care of, things that I, to this day, probably don't know what was going on and didn't have to worry about. And Cindy took care of my class, even though she was having to deal with her own 2 boys that had lost a friend. And Phil Chandler showed up at the funeral home and offered to sing at the funeral. I didn't even have to call him. He just was there when I got there. Joe and Terry Dover and, well, just everybody doing things all over the place, getting everything ready and asking me what I needed and what I wanted. I remember the craziest thing is I remember Terry, who's sorry if I call him Mr. Dover because that's the way I knew him. He said, what do you need? And the only thing I could think of was that I needed Michael's glasses fixed because they were destroyed. And he said, I got this. So I don't even know how he got them fixed, but he did. But so that was a long, stressful week, and things moved on, and the funeral, and this church was packed here and there. We didn't have the fellowship there, so it was a trailer over here, and that was full, and I don't know. There were people everywhere. I don't even remember. And so the next Sunday, I was determined to come to church. I just needed to be here, but I was struggling. The music, which is my favorite part of the service, I found it difficult to sing. The prayers meant nothing to me. I was so bitter, so numb. I was mad. I don't know that I was mad at God, but I was mad at something. And I was ashamed that I was thinking, why Michael? Why did you take Michael? Because I know there's got to be somebody out there who deserved that more than him. And I was so embarrassed and so ashamed that I felt that way. I still wanted to know what I did to deserve this overwhelming pain. So the days, of course, went by, just ticking on by, and I'm just still moving like a robot, just doing what I'm supposed to do, trying to help Michelle. And so one day, somebody, and I don't even know who, I wished I knew. If you gave me this book, please tell me you gave me this book. But I finally got around to reading it. It's called When Bad Things Happen to Good People by Harold Kushner. And if you've not read that book, because I know every one of you out here has had pain, and you need to read that book. So one statement it had many wonderful, wonderful, helpful statements, but this is kind of long, but this is what it said. God does not cause our misfortune. Some are caused by bad luck, some by bad people, and some are simply inevitable consequences of our being human and being mortal, living in a world of inflexible natural laws. The painful things that happen to us are not punishments for our misbehavior, nor are they in any way part of some grand design on God's part. Because the tragedy is not God's will, we need not feel hurt or betrayed by God when tragedy strikes. We can turn to Him for help in overcoming it, precisely because we can tell ourselves that God is as outraged by it as we are. That did so much for me. I don't understand to this day why I ever felt like God did that to me. But my head started to clear. I wasn't ashamed anymore. I wasn't as angry. And I started reflecting, because then I realized God was there during the whole thing, because I was just too overwhelmed to notice. For instance, John King, some of you know him, he was a member here. He was a first responder at that accident, and he stayed with Michael to Winder, and then from Winder to Athens. He didn't have to do that, but he wanted to make sure Michael was not alone and had family with him. Joe didn't usually come in on Saturdays, but he was there that morning because he needed to have family there. About a month prior to the accident, this annoying person called me from Visa one morning trying to sell me life insurance for my children. And I was too busy to listen, and she said, you get it for 3 months for free. And I said, okay, fine. Just send that to me, that's fine. Click. That policy arrived a week before he was killed. And then after everything settled down, and Ricky and I started sitting in our quiet house, and we opened up cards and letters and emptied coat pockets and whatever, just whatever we could think of. People were sending us cards, people we do not know, total strangers, friends of friends who had heard what happened, who wanted to express their grief for us and send us prayers. And we took all the money and the checks and everything that we had gotten out, all those cards, and we took them up to the bank. And it was exactly the amount of the balance due on the funeral. Okay, that's God. Totally God. And, I think I finally, at that point, I realized I missed out on a whole bunch of things that were happening that I appreciate. The Boy Scouts were here and doing things. All of his Boy Scout buddies, I know they were here. I saw them. But God didn't, I realized that God didn't punish me by taking Michael. His accident was just that. It was an accident. And it wasn't God's plan that morning, but it was His plan to be there for me and my family. And it just took me a while to finally see that. But this church family right here, for those of you who are new, you have no idea how wonderful these people can be and how supportive. And anytime you go through anything, they're there and they want to be there and they mean every bit of it. So if you're struggling with thinking that you've done something in your life to deserve the pain that you're going through, you have not. Just let God talk to you and let you know He's there. He's there for you. It's so funny because Scotty's lesson this morning in Sunday school was just about the same thing. It's not, you have a plan. There's no reason to be stressed about it. God does have a plan. Don't be stressed about it. His plan, you don't know, and we don't have to live up to it, because we can't. There's too many things coming at us all the time. So just know that he is there when you don't think he is. So that's all. Yeah, so y'all get to eat lunch early today. And I didn't have to use my stool.